Alright guys, for this episode we're going to start looking at how to add biomes and how to start working with ShigiTools to speed up the process of filling in the map. So with Demon's Land we didn't paint everything in manually, we built tools that helped us to get a starting foundation, added some procedural generation to it and then refined it afterwards. So I'm going to go through the basics of that process now. So you'll find ShigiTools up in the top menu. It'll look something like this. So basically what this does is it has tabs for programmatically modifying lots of different parts of the map. So splats refers to the texture that's painted on the ground. So we'll go through that first. Currently we only have one texture that's set on the terrain, so if we were to create a splat filter fill, a splat picker, we only have one that we can fill, so it's not actually going to do anything. So let's say on this map we're going to do something crazy and we're going to blend snow into red desert. So let's add a new texture and let's find the snow. And we'll grab the snow normal map. Not sure whether this is the same one that we use in Demon's Land, but it'll do for now. Okay, so you'll see that show up here. Before I go into that, I'll just show you the manual way of doing things. So the Unity way of doing things. With the paintbrush selected, you can pick a splat and you can paint it in. So this doesn't affect the height, this just affects the texture that appears on the ground and the normal map. So what we're going to do is use a image that will generate in Photoshop as a mask of the whole terrain. So if we looked at it like this, we're going to draw a line down it and say that's our border of our biome. The reason we do this is because there's multiple factors that are affected by that border and it would be a pain in the ass to make them all match. So if we were to paint white in exactly on that line, then we'd have to generate the biomes, which is through a separate system to say that it's colder on one side of that line. If it's not a clean line, we want to blend between them, it gets really tricky. Then we've got things like we want to spawn snowy bushes on one side and red bushes on the other, including swapping out rocks and whatnot. So I've already prepared a basic mask in Photoshop. You can use any image editor. The only thing that matters with the mask is that it's black and white. White being, blending between black and white, so white being full and black being empty. So if we're applying a mask to something to say fill snow texture wherever there is white in the mask, and it will map it to that portion of the terrain and it will paint over it. So you'll see as we go through that in a sec. So if we open up ShigiTools again, splats is our first tab. We haven't got a preset for this, let's create it from scratch. So any of these that you do create, you can create a preset and then you can load them up later and reapply them. And we'll just build ours from nothing. So first thing we want to do is fill as a base color. So we'll set our base color to brown ripple sand as it is. We're not going to set a texture mask because we want to just apply it to everything. And we'll set our fill type to absolute. So we're saying all over the map, set the strength of red desert to 1 as the first step. We do this because if we're constantly doing additive operations, if we were to run this twice, the second time we run it, we might get a different result. So what this does is just bring us back to the same result the first every time we run it, so we can rerun it if we tweak the values. Now we want to do another fill. In this scenario, we want to fill it with snow rock, and we want to use greedy. So greedy will say if we're trying to apply 100% snow to a portion of the map, say over here, greedy will leave all the other values at 0, so it'll set brown ripple sand to 0. If we set it to 0.5, say in the middle, it will set red or brown ripple sand to 0.5 and just basically take what it needs. Okay, so now we want to define which region we want to apply the second fill to. So we've created this mask over here. If we drag that into our texture mask, yes. So whenever we import a new texture mask into Unity, we need to make sure it is editable or read-writable. So you can do that by opening up its texture settings in the inspector, going to advanced and setting read-write enabled. Once we've done that, that should fix up that error. Okay, and as for where it actually maps to the terrain, sometimes you'll find it's like sideways or it's back the front of what you wanted. You can use these tick boxes to bring it to the alignment that you expected it to be in. We are working in grayscale because black and white, that's fine. And additive doesn't actually mean anything here because there is only one texture mask. In other parts of ShigiTools, you can have multiple masks multiplying out to each other, and that has some interesting effects, but for now we'll just leave that at add. Okay, and we'll give that a shot and see how that goes. Okay, so like I was saying, it's done the exact opposite of what I expected it to. So in this case, we'll say, let's flip the x-axis and see how that looks. Okay. If I'm comparing it to what I've got over here, it's still not right. It's still upside down, so let's also flip the y-axis. Beautiful. Okay, now if you head down to ground level, actually let's just save this preset real quick under our map. Let's create a new folder. Okay, so if we fly down to ground level, you notice that the edging on the textures is pretty rough. The resolution isn't super high with the blending of the textures, and it can look a bit dodgy. It'll also be very glitchy when moving through here with biomes. You'll see the lighting colors change very quickly, and your temperature will change very drastically. What I like to do is to, if we open up our original mask, is to blur the image using a Gaussian blur. I'll do that through the settings so you can see how I did it. Okay, so depending on how much you want them to bleed into each other, you can crank up the blur. I reckon something like that should be fine. So if we save that, go back into Unity, have a look at our texture. So Unity's re-brought it in. So what we want to do now is rerun that ShigiTools preset. So if we open it up now, you'll notice that it's lost the reference to what it had before. So that's the reason why you always want to save your templates. So if I browse to the one I created before, it should reload all the settings that I had exactly as they were before. All good. And if I run this again, you'll see that it should blur these edges much nicer. There we go. Now you can have as many of these masks as you want. The operations in ShigiTools, it'll just run one after the other. So if I wanted to add a third greedy texture that sliced across the bottom of the map and painted that brown or something like that, that would work fine. In Demon's Land we have maybe 10 different filters in each one of these templates. You can do some more advanced stuff with this. If you have a look through all the different filters, you can do things like generate Perlin noise of a splat map. So if you want to create variation in the texture of the ground, something we do in Demon's Land is we've got 2 different red desert textures that we slowly blend in and out of each other, just so it doesn't all look exactly the same. And that's done with a Perlin noise generator. But I won't go into that for now. Let's just keep this as simple as possible. Okay, so the next thing we want to look at is getting the biomes to match up. So what we can do with that, if we open up the Biomes tab, we can generate the biome data from a mask, just like we did the ground textures. So let's add a new fill, just like the ground texture. So under Splat Picker, you want to tick Display Biomes, and this will show you all the ones available currently in our build. You can't create these yet. Like the dynamic objects, we hope you can do this soon. It's just when we get around to doing that. The ones that are currently used and have proper configurations for them are Starting Coast, Hot Desert, Salt Flats, Arctic, and I think Wasteland and Savannah. Savannah is what's used in the sand dunes. So what we want here is we want extreme desert on one side, and we want Arctic on the other. Sorry, hot desert on one side, Arctic on the other. So we'll start with a fill, make everything hot desert, just like we did before, with no texture mask. Then we'll do another fill. We'll mask this again to biome. Switch off our flips. Because the output of this ends up in a different system, you may get different orientations from the same texture with the same flip configurations as you did in splats. You'll have to use just a bit of trial and error there. Once you've got the configuration right, you won't have to look at it again. So we want to say, so we're overriding with Arctic what we're masked to. Okay. So if we run that, actually first let's save that. Let's go maps. So this is biome settings. Alright, so we give that a run. You won't get any initial feedback from that, so to test if this has worked, we need to click on our biome manager. Okay, so I'll just move that out of the way. So the biome manager, when selected, will show you these black semi-transparent squares. So that's something we forgot to do. So before we generate these, what we should be doing is creating a new biome cache. So what just happened then is we generated the biome cache into the default biome cache, which is overriding the one that is sort of just a quick start, and it's not actually referenced by your map. This will always stay the same, so none of these biome changes will be in effect if you built this map right now. So what we need to do is create a new copy of this, just like we did with the spawner cache. So we go save cache as new, chuck it in our maps folder. Okay, so the biome manager doesn't like cloning the file using the other method, so what we're going to do is actually just clone it through the file system or through the project. So if we navigate to default biome cache, press Ctrl D and drag that into our test map folder. It is very important that you move it, otherwise it will be built as part of a separate asset bundle, which will mean it won't be included in your map and you won't have any biomes. So let's just rename that to test map and then select the biome manager in the map, and we need to then assign our new biome cache. Let's bring back ShigiTools that we had open before and do a regeneration. So we're saying fill with hot desert to start with, and then override, we want to change that to greedy for Arctic. Anything painted white inside this mask that we have here. So this should create a nice blend of the biomes and not change too quickly as it moves across. Alright, so we'll give that another go. Oh, actually something else that I like to do with the biomes, which seems to help, is putting a blur operation with a couple of iterations after everything. This just ensures it's nice and smooth. Okay, so if we want to test if this is actually working, let's just save this again. We click on Biome Manager, and the cache should be already loaded, but we'll click load just to make sure. So the way this visualization works is it will color these black squares depending on whether how full a biome is set for that region. Currently we're set to none, so it won't show anything. So if we select starting coast, that'll show us where starting coast is set. Because we only have hot desert and Arctic, only those will show. So if we say hot desert, we can see that this region of the map is set to hot desert. The visualization here is set to much lower resolution than it actually is because the editor struggles to render too many squares. If you really want a high res display, you can untick this tick box, but you'll notice that trying to fly around the map at the same time does not work. So that's the actual resolution that you'll get when you're running through the map. Each one of these cells has its own biome configuration. Alright, so if we turn off low res display, we can go back to flying around. We can also make sure that we've got Arctic displaying fine. All looks good. Alright. Alright, so I've just loaded the map up. Give it a quick test. The biome seems to be working fine. So you can see as I run into the snow, you'll notice that the lighting changes and I start to get colder. All of these settings are baked into our biome configurations, so you currently can't edit them, but if you set the biome, it should all look right, and the temperature setup should be right. One thing I do notice is that none of our spawners are working, and I think I know why. So there's one step I left out. If we just go back to Unity, we need to add a couple more extra scripts to the terrain. So if you click on your terrain object, click add component, we need to add ground marker. We also need to add terrain settings manager and terrain shader manager. Save that. Now if we build this again. Okay, so the build's completed. We've got a new map. So we need to recopy this back like the first episode into our dedicated server. I currently have one running, so I'm just going to kill it and rehost. We then need to grab our Hurtworld client, update the map in there too. And then rerun the game. Okay, so we instantly see we've got Shiggies and we've got ground rocks we can pick up, and this is almost a playable map. Now the last step that you'll notice if we run up to this little guy, that he's not moving, and it's because we don't have a Navmesh yet. The Navmesh needs to be built out of the running game client. So to do that, you need to copy the map into your game and not load a map, not join a server, and you just need to type one command which will generate it, which you need to then copy back in. So if I disconnect from here, so after launching the game you just need to type bake navmesh space the name of your map. Depending on the size of the map, this could take a very long time. It's sort of like, yeah, possibly an hour with Demon's Land. For the smaller maps, it's a little bit faster. Due to the nature of the process, we can't give you feedback on it in the console. So if you want to know how it's going or how long it's going to take while it's running, if you open up the Hurtworld client game folder and have a look at the output log, you'll be able to see the percentage of tiles that it's through generating. In this case, we're already done. So if I open this back up, that's happy. And you'll see that it writes the file out to the maps folder next to where you generated it. So if we now quit the game, you'll see this file here. This basically tells our creatures how to navigate around objects, and it'll make it so that they move around in the world. This only needs to be done once, unless you update your map. If you update the things that they need to path around, then you'll need to regenerate it. It can be loaded from inside the same folder as the map, but it's better to actually embed it inside your map. That way you don't need to distribute two files. So to do that, just drag it from where it was generated back into the project. Select the level objects game object, and you'll see a Navmesh cache reference. So grab your new Navmesh, chuck it in there, save that, and then rebuild your map, and it will embed that in there, and you can delete it out of the game folder where it was generated to. I'll just let that build and reload the map, and we'll see how it goes. Alright, so we're back with the new build of the map, which should have an embedded Navmesh in it. So if we run at this little guy, he should run away. There we go. Alright, so now we have started touching ShigiTools we've generated correct biome information. We've painted the ground via splats, via a mask. And we've added some spawners in for resources. So that's about everything you need to create the basics of a map that's actually playable. The more advanced tools, obviously this map sucks, but the more advanced tools will make it so it's easier to create more content quickly, because Demon's Land is about 7Ks across. To paint all that by hand is an absolute nightmare, so the tools assist you in generating large open spaces and making them somewhat interesting. Some things can't be substituted, and you need to add a bit of manual interestingness every now and then, but we'll go into that in future episodes. But this should be enough to get you guys started working on maps. We're going to start working on the integration to Workshop soon, so by the time we make maps available to be playable, it should all be integrated into the server browser. So similar to something like Dota 2, when you pick a map or pick a server that you want to join, you don't have the assets to join, that it will automatically go to Workshop and fetch them for you. So as a map creator, you should just be able to submit your map to Workshop. Server host should be able to select the map that they want to use, and they won't need to worry about making sure that they distribute the map to all the people that want to play on it. It should all be seamless. That'll be when we get around to it. So until next time, see you later.